Hello and welcome to another episode of Awaken Dreaming. My name is Jess,
I'm Utah Jazz.
and this, and we are going to be continuing the episode off again, talking about family lineage healing. So if you haven't seen the last episode, episode 11, do go check that episode out before you do actually watch or listen to this episode. Um, and obviously, of course, you can find us on Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and so many other places
Basically
as
everywhere.
well. Yeah, basically everywhere. Um, but some of you may have, if you've listened to the previous episode, you may have like some questions because Yuta, like at the very end of the episode, kind of dropped like a little bit of a bombshell, even for me. And I feel like we need a bit of an update,
Bomb.
Yuta.
Okay, bombshell for you. It was a freaking bombshell for me. I didn't know what the f happened. I was making a joke, and then it turned out to be a whole freaking hint for me on like something that might have happened. Long story short, you can accidentally curse people. You didn't really know of that or think of that, but hey, that makes sense. And there
I
we go.
mean, I knew it was possible to like without consciously realizing you
But
cursing
have you
people.
met a person like that?
Yes, I have.
Actually, okay. So it's very
Yeah,
common.
I have. Yeah, it's actually more common than people think.
Well,
Um,
look out for accidental cursing of people. You can call it back and off, don't worry about it. But yeah, there we go. That's what happened. That was a kick of in my arse from, just the podcast system. I don't know. Every single episode kind of does something in terms of like reworking something or figuring something out. So that was probably that episode's thing for me. So it was
I
fun.
mean, yeah, I mean, you guys probably don't know, but like sometimes by us even talking about this stuff, it brings up stuff for us that we have to like work through and heal, or even in the preparation to the episode, stuff starts popping up in our lives
Mhm.
that we have to work through before we can even record the episode. And that's just, I guess, part of that process that we have when it comes to like recording and releasing Awakened Dreaming. Um, I guess the question that I think people are going to want to ask you is like, how did you kind of work through? Was it real? Wasn't it real? Uh, in relation to that.
Um, well, first I needed to figure out why did I get a feeling of it being a thing, and I usually follow my own breadcrumb path of it, of okay, does anything else pop up or come up with it? Because I usually have a physical sensation, whether it's true or not, or if there's something that is causing discomfort around the topic. Um,
Hmm.
and then after I realized who it is and how it could have been and had a long talk with my higher self and friends and guides, I figured out, yeah, I need to do something to let it go. So I just focus on the intent of undoing it, apologizing it, and whatever consolation prize I could find for the person in the astral. So that's about it. I don't know how well they are gonna do after this point, but I think everything's okay. Yeah, that's why you should let go of grudges as early on as you could without having them carry over for a nonsensical period of time. 'Cause
Mm.
you can accidentally, without knowing it, curse a person that's kind of actually really cool, and you're not really aware of it, and they're actually in a completely different place. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of curses kind of happen like that. Just
Well, they do because, and that's also as well. It kind of proves how powerful thought is because quite often this just comes from like intensive thought.
hmm
Um, Now, what I will say, what I will say in this particular case, normally they like there and they dip pretty quickly. I will say just yours kind of stood a bit more of the test of the time from what we can kind of gather.
Yeah, it was a while. It affected more than one person, I'm afraid, as well. In general, was not a good thing I found out. So yeah. But hey, shit happens, part of life. Like,
Mhm.
um, in general, like you don't really need to be spiritual, witchy, or have a heritage of that. You can just accidentally do that. I've heard plenty of stories from like a person's gran who would didn't really know their native tongue but knew enough to like do curses, and they actually freaking worked. And I'm like, okay, so this is not the first example I hear of people actually managing to put a curse on someone else with just the way they speak and how much passion and intent they have behind
Mm.
the wish of ill harm, or for something to not work out so they learned their lesson or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I think occasionally you hear this within the spiritual community, but it's kind of like this sort of like underlining gray area where some
Mhm.
people believe it, some people don't. Like I said myself, I've seen and witnessed this affect people and actually people figuring out this stuff before you to, as well. Like and how that kind of affects the other person and also the person doing the curse as well because 'cause they're kinda like, "What? Like, I have the power to do this. This is kinda scary," and, um, obviously, it for those of you who feel that you have done this, it's a process. What I will say is because obviously I was sitting on the other side here, I was sitting here and I'm like, "Why is she, like, mentioning this, like, bombshell? Like, what the hell?" Like this is insane, this is crazy. And it feels real, like, why is she doing this?
I still have a theory that it was happening also because I was trying to not let anything too personal through. Spirit has plans all the time. Okay, I'm gonna have like this not happen. Oh no, it still happens. Great. No, but
Mhm.
in general, I think it was more helpful to me. And if anyone's gonna be listening to it, now they can actually like look at their stuff too and see like, hey, maybe I did something accidentally. If this is real.
Well, that's the funny thing is now we've got this, like, almost teaching guide because you've literally went through the process
Mhm.
almost live on air.
Almost. with the with the a little bit out, the nonsensical, non-mattering side. But anyway, joking
The
aside,
questioning and figuring out.
yeah.
Um But, I mean, this is funny because it also leads us into what we're talking about. Like we said, we're talking about family lineage and this type of stuff. Um, but we're gonna go into the more practical side today.
Okay.
So this, like, fits actually hand in glove type thing for today's episode.
I'm actually now thinking of the actual dynamic of the curse in mine. Like my situation, and then what we're talking about, and it just kind of clicked in how it fits, and I'm like, okay, moving on. Oh.
There is actually one thing that I kind of wanted to share, and I forgot to share it in the previous episode, which is like I have worked with Aboriginal people in the past, and they like I don't. I'm pretty sure I didn't mention this in the previous episode. If I have, I apologize to the listeners for repeating it. But Aboriginal people have a very strong belief that the land, like, is its own thing, and the land takes revenge, uh, on people. Now, because the Aboriginal people are custodians of the land, they're there to, like, help it, protect it, nurture it, grow it, um, if they are not protecting the land which they are the custodians for, which is like where their ancestors from, and most Aboriginals in Australia they follow the maternal line, so they actually follow the line of the mother,
Mm.
not the father. So you're where you are connected to is not necessarily where you were born because there has been a lot of Aboriginals that have been moved and through different circumstances, which we won't get into in today's episode. But wherever the mother's tribe is from, that will be where they are the custodians. That's their, which we'll probably have another episode fully about all the different little tweaks and bits that I've picked up over the years from this. Um, but so because it's part of that line, your land you may not necessarily be living on. But what happens is because they are custodians, um, at times that here in Australia, the government will actually go to them and ask them to seek approval to see, like, can we clear this site? Is this a sacred site? Is it okay to, you know, do whatever it is to this site? Or elders will actually step in and say, no, this is a sacred site. You can't actually develop this land or do this area here needs to stay this way. And what can happen sometimes within this is, of course, people have greed and they have money that they want to sort of get, and the government does pay them for their expertise. And occasionally, people will lie because they want obviously the project to go ahead for whatever reason, whether it's for the benefit of the community or they don't know better. Some of them actually don't know better, I will say. So it's not just like people not necessarily knowing. Um, and or they want money, right? Greed. And they will actually like green light some projects that shouldn't actually be green lighted and destroy some of these sacred sites to that particular tribe of people. Now, in the time that I was working out there, I can 100% say that there were occasions where I heard and also talked to different family members that um, other family members would break that rule, and more often than not, you would actually see a ramification. And that ramification was quite often like sickness, right? Cancer. There was also instances of like weird occasions where like the houses would burn down, and I'm not talking like one house. Like the house would burn down. They would move. The next house would burn down, and these were not like deliberately lit or anything like that. The fire, like the fireys were like, these are accidents. This is so strange that this is happening. Um, and it wasn't necessarily as well, I will say, the person that uh, did the act of actually breaking that trust. It actually went to the family line. And depending on how much, I guess you could say, quote unquote, blood the land thought that was taken, would also depend on how many people, I guess you could say, this curse kind of affected. And they actually have ceremonies, and which I have not been a part of because it's like it's not something that me as someone that's not part of that family line, that's not something I would be invited into. But they have ceremonies and these types of things to actually release and ask for forgiveness and heal, so then that doesn't get like carried down within the family line. And this is something that they've had for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this is kind of worth mentioning that there are instances within different cultures where this, and I don't know every culture, but I'm certain this isn't the only instance where this occurs within cultures.
I mean, in general, you kind of like connected a few things for me on that front with like every single place has its own history and that it does play a significant part. I mean, you have your own, let's say I'll compare my neck of the woods with, let's say, America. Most places there have a specific energy in all of the various little spots that you can like definitely see, you know. Let's say it has something to do with certain Native American beliefs in culture within like deserts or whatever, of either
Mm,
spirits or curses or responsibilities, for their traditions and beliefs, and the point that, you know, a lot of people outside of those groups still actually carry on beliefs, because they still experience occurrences. You know, some people actually have their own um, spiritual experience with that, even if they're outside of, their group or tribe or whatever. Here we don't necessarily have as much in terms of like specific spiritual kind of groups or whatever like that left over. Our culture is a mix between pagan stuff and Christianity, as well as a lot of political history, and that sends a lot of energy out. Wherever you're born, you're still carrying that karma around. You're
Mhm.
living whatever has really impacted either the place you're born in or your family or just like the many different people around you and how those stories flow through and whatever. And a lot of stuff can be left over from that, not just curses, but also blessings, talents. If you kind of look around at families, you can see that interesting development of like how there is a specialty or a profession. It almost seems like yeah, it branches out. There's a bit of a variation. Not every single person is going to be, let's say, either a politician or a builder or whatever, but they will go down even the avenues that are commonly a bit more black sheepish within the family,
Mm.
and it carries over, and you don't even really know how that kind of is playing out these days, right? Like it because there's no archives or recording. There's no passing down really. There's heirlooms which have their
That's it.
own magical stuff behind it. I feel like heirlooms, they've always fascinated me, and to this day, like they're only getting more interesting because what is this item like? What is it carrying? How has it shaped, or
Mhm.
connected something within or for the family? And what is it gonna become in the future? There's no new ones popping up and etc. And it's it's kind of it's a really charged thing of its own. Um, a lot of people that have an idea of what they're going through in terms of karmic lineage usually still have to go through past life stuff or either visions or interesting conversations and journeys like to those places that they know they have roots in.
Yep.
And yeah, it's interesting how it's like panning out like that. You can pick up anything and everything. You don't know what you're dealing with, basically.
I will say, like, for anyone that is looking to do family lineage kind of healing, looking into your family tree, like if you have the ability to kind of get some information about your ancestors, and even if it's basic of where they lived, what they did as a profession, um, and then if you get anything else, which a lot of the times you can't, but, like, for example, I am lucky enough that I do have some stuff about some, like, family lineage stuff that I've kind of found over the years through different searching, and it's kind of put pieces together for me around, my own family lineage stuff that I'm working through and healing with, and I think that that's a huge tip that sometimes gets ignored because we look at, the immediate family or few generations, um, but sometimes that information is readily available there on the internet for us if we just kind of have a bit of a search.
Yep. Um, it's also an interesting little thing to look at. I mean, you have family lineage, obviously as a important part of anyone's development because there's testing like of your DNA and heritage somewhere else and etc. And what
Mhm.
is your like makeup. You also have it proven in neuroscience. You definitely
Yep.
like have so many pointers to the point that there is a lot of use from it, but it's about how you're going to get through that or introduce into that.
Yeah. And if you're finding this information on, it's also as well, you don't have to own like, oh, because this happened, 5, 6, 3 generations ago, obviously that's the reason why. Like, not everything does get passed down
Yep,
through that. So it's kind of like, okay, that's happened. And part of the process, I mean, this is part of my process with like figuring out anything is I like the major thing for me is let things percolate.
Mhm.
Let things boil down, because with time things become a lot clearer. And don't be afraid to be like, "Hey, I was wrong. Like, I thought it was this,
Yep.
but it's not." Because 1, you're gonna make it easier on yourself, right? You've just, like, eased your workload, because 'cause you're like, "I don't need to do that work. It's obviously something else, like, I'm gonna look at something else," or, you know, or the issue completely goes away because like, co-created, manifested this issue because you thought it was connected to something.
Yep. I mean, in the thing that I instantly thought of is like when you're going through certain points of like awakening and you start connecting whatever you figure out about yourself with whatever spiritual higher like self aspects or that this that and the other, and you're usually obviously in a bit of a point of like solitude or hermithood because you're
Mhm,
figuring stuff out, and it's really easy to attach to things that aren't there, or if they have a significance, it's like completely, you know, little, like simple things that kind of just like, you know, are something to reflect on or add up, but you don't really need to attach yourself to any of this to have a label on yourself or identify yourself. If it helps you out, figure something out, then perfect, it's awesome. Don't don't overattach, because personally with my experience that has not worked out really good. You set up expectations, you get shut down. um, you want to figure something out, maybe you don't even need to figure it out because there's nothing with it.
mhm.
And you kind of miss the point of what maybe the message might be behind um, everything you're going through for you personally in relation to, you know, your family, how you connect with the world, what have you chosen for yourself in this incarnation, what have you like chosen to like carry on or experience, you know. um not yeah no real label has ever helped me, at least once I started getting into it. That was also my biggest fear, is like, don't attach to a label because you don't know what the hell is gonna happen. Spirit's crazy, and they like taking you on roller coasters that don't make a second of sense. Everything's blurred. And it's all really cool and hype because you're scared for your life because you're going at like, you know, high speeds and altitudes. Just take a breather and look at it after you take a good night's rest. You know, some things will stick,
Yeah.
some things will definitely go away.
And I mean, I've funnily enough, I've got an example that this kind of popped up. I mean, it's been popping up a little bit for me recently. It doesn't have to do with family lineage, but for those of you who know human design, um, when I first came across human design, I was like, "This is bullshit. I don't believe anything about it." My friends were like, "There's definitely something in it. Like, you need to really look at it. You need to like look at your gates and really understand it. You need to find the key." And I was like, "Look, okay, I'm gonna look into it, but I'm not feeling it. Like, this isn't working for me." I don't understand it. That was in 2020, by the way, like 2020, probably mid 2020. Um, and I would just make jokes about my type and you know, just be sarcastic around it. Um, and every so often, occasionally, I would look into it or try and learn, and I'd kind of like hit a wall and just be like, still not working for me. Because I did wanna see if there was something involved with it, and I kinda just, okay, put it to the side, put it on the back burner, and it wasn't till recently that I started to notice some things, and I
You
was like, "Hang on a second, like,
really
this
didn't
connects to
like it.
human design."
You
I
really
I
didn't like it.
100%.
And then once you started liking it, you were like, okay, this makes sense. I kind of can appreciate it now.
But I will say at the same time, I'm still very cautious with fully accepting, like, that this is the only way, and that was my major issue back then and still is my major issue with human design now. It does inform some stuff and does explain different aspects and how things kind of unroll for me in my life. Um, but that isn't necessarily going to stop me from acting differently, which is, I think, also a huge thing to kind of remember when we do these like tests or information and we attach things to it. That doesn't necessarily have to be us 100% of the time.
Mhm. Um,
Get the benefit that you get from it and then, like, let it go. At the moment, I'm getting benefit from human design. I could, do a podcast episode with you in a year's time and tell you it's absolute crap again.
yep.
Uh, and, like, I reserve the right to change my opinion on it, but for the moment, it's helping me unravel some things, personally for myself. Now, obviously, we're in 2022, so it's been, like, 2 years of me going on this journey for the most part, being like, nothing's there,
And it's gonna
and
change.
occasionally looking into it. So don't feel you need to figure out the answer, like, super fast. Sometimes these things take a long time to unravel, and they unravel when the right time is for you.
Basically, yeah. I mean, I couldn't have said it way better than that. Because at the end of the day, at least the way I view it is like you're gonna see a bunch of things that are gonna have some type of like either impact or message or whatever. But just as, most of us grow up with some like skepticism around zodiacs and horoscopes or like ghosts and witchery and whatever in the power of your intent, just absolutely anything. I think it's healthy to exercise that to balance yourself out with any piece of information because it'll give you what it'll need to give you, but it's not anything that you should be defining yourself by because at the end of the day, you're a free flowing individual. Your consciousness constantly shifting. You're not gonna have
Mm,
something definite to go by. There's no straight answers to having like a template for everything having an answer because that's not the point. There's no answers.
yeah.
It's just
I
things
mean,
you figure out occasionally.
Easter egg with human design is I think there's more the types than they've actually got currently, and I that was actually part of my issue with human design. Like, that was one of the first I was like, I get that, these are the types, but I think actually with time, they're actually gonna add more types, and specify it more because it feels too broad to me at this point. Um,
Um, to me, like it's just different schools of whatever spiritual practices. I don't think there any of like one of them is the right one, because usually they have a little bit of a backstory that is just like a bit of a backstory into whatever it's about and how it can help or might not help you completely.
mm,
So I'm kind of more on the like on the part of it of eventually all of this is gonna mix into a thing that maybe you could use, but even then it's evolving, it's changing. It like even just astrology and I would say human design at this point too kind of needs to go through a bit of a refresher of something new. I don't know what it is. I feel like there's something missing. Um, but that's gonna change over time and you're eventually gonna probably see spirituality with a bunch of like religious philosophy then like practices on either manifestation or whatever matrix simulation things you want to have. Then you're gonna have rituals as well as mentioned with it and also human design, astrology and all the other different things you can kind of read about yourself, but none of it is
mm.
gonna be definite. I don't think so. It's just gonna be tools.
Yeah, and I think, you wrapped that up perfectly, my side little Easter egg hunt that I've thrown into the episode, as I often do. Um, but going, I guess, back we'll come back to actual ancestral healing. Um, One of the things I did wanna kind of, I guess, mention, and one of the things that I think is important, if you don't know your family history, one of the ways you can kind of, uh, practically work through some of this stuff is looking at your mother and your father. Now, obviously, if you don't know your mother and your father, that's a little difficult, but it may also still, funnily enough, come from whoever you consider your mother and father, like who raised you. That's because they've kind of endowed through uh, looking after you, mentoring you, teaching you, right? Those qualities, those abilities. So for some people, that's going to be more complicated. For people that are, obviously in that nuclear family, that's going to be a lot easier
Mhm.
because you've got mom and dad right there. Um, and have a look at your relationship with them. What's the trend within the family, um, and even as well talking to them about what they know about previous generations and aunts and uncles that you probably have never possibly even met or have had not had much to do with,
Yeah.
can help to untangle some of those threads.
I do gotta say that I find it interesting how families that kind of come together to be that non-nuclear family, in my opinion, still have like obviously contracts or other things on helping each other out in their own family
Mm,
lineage, and that person or point of where they're obviously like together, I think kind of becomes like its own mix and shape that eventually goes on. Or sometimes just a extra bit on the story that passes onwards and whatever, because obviously you have people that go through a few families and don't really have that, and it's their own break off thing.
yeah.
But yeah, all kind of connected.
And, it's interesting 'cause, like, there are definitely times where, like, a child is born and you look at, like, mom and dad and the child is, like, really like mom or really like dad, and then mom and dad break up, and then they get, like, whoever they're more like that person, like, let's say that child is more like mom, and then they get with someone else, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh my god, that child is like the the dad that she got with."
Mhm.
And sometimes I do think on like a soul level, the it's the agreement of like, yes, I'm carrying these two lines, but actual in fact I'm more connected to the person that isn't my biological father. Um,
Mhm.
or my biological mother for that matter. I'm actually more connected to this other person. Um, and they have that contract there that they are gonna be looked after, cared for, and grow up and pick up some of the karma from their non-biological family.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like a little bit of chemistry until you get to like certain points like that. Either divorces and people getting remarried and how that affects kids and goes on, um, or or like kids being sent out either to orphanages or like just traveling in the family, or the difference in a person's life once they get married. That's a big one because that's a
Mhm.
jump in family. So everything you
Yep.
do up to that point is kind of what you do to round up whatever lessons you can, or like family karma and lineage in like your own individual state, and then that crosses over whatever else is left to your actual family. Um, Always going to be a different scenario.
I mean, just to, I kinda guess, give some reprieve to, like, anyone that's kind of changed families or considering divorce or whatever else like that. Sometimes by doing this, you're actually clearing the
Yeah.
karma and the lineage, actually helping your kids, even if they're born. Like, you're actually allowing them to get out of that family cycle because they go into a new environment, they experience new things, and those ties or those switches get unflicked,
hmm
that we were talking about in the previous episode.
So to round all of that up, you're not really going to know what's the best choice or option, and don't look to see to other people, other examples of other families, or even what you hear within your own. to make your decisions on how to heal and move forward within your life, because at the end of the day, you're the best you can do is make your own choices with the research or ideas or thoughts or
Hmm.
realizations you have, and do what is healthiest for you, alongside
Yeah.
with obviously your loved ones in mind. Um, One thing is like I've noticed one little detail is you're not really gonna know which is better, being closer or further away from your family in terms of you being
Hmm.
healthier either mentally or karmically, evolving into a better suit or point. I don't think anyone can ever advise you on that because you gotta figure that one out on yourself, but that one's the most foggiest one I've seen so far. Um, but yeah.
I mean, it depends on the person. For some people, it'll be really clear, like being away or being with them is that's the answer. But again, that's your own journey with it.
Mhm.
Um, and this is where it's I mean, it's something we say you've got to start to learn to trust yourself. When you're doing this family lineage work, part of it is learning to figure out trusting yourself on different aspects of it, but also letting it go as well.
Yep, very much true. I mean, just in general, not being afraid to look at your family. I think there's a lot of stigma on sharing or communicating about that, or just even looking at that. There's like a flip that happens in a lot of people that's kind of like, just fucking bolt, just get away, just run, run, Forrest, run. But in reality, regardless if you decide to like physically move or whatever from that, you're still gonna need to look at yourself. So that means you're still gonna need to look at where you grew up, the environment, people, whatever you need to, whatever you
Mm,
experience as family, because that's gonna have a lot of answers for that. And sometimes it's just going to help you understand how to cope, or go through whatever you're going through, rather than just making a definite decision of like, I'm the healer in the family, I'm gonna do my best to clear all of the fucking karma. I'm here to save everyone. Like, you don't need to do that. At the end of the day, it's just gonna be
mm.
helping you out with something you feel, strongly about, and maybe have confusion over. There's also like an interesting thing that I've noticed. Some psychotherapists do. They're actually somehow working with the idea of karma. Super fucking expensive. Don't don't feel like recommending that either way. But point is, I'm kind of surprised. um, there's yeah,
I'm not.
you. I know you're not, but like, cause like an NLP, right? Like that's
Mhm.
completely like
Yeah,
self-explanatory. So if you can do that, you can definitely do karma. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, still different ways of going around it.
For those of you who don't know what NLP is, it's neuro linguistic programming, and it was invented. Just to give you like a quick brief download, it was invented by two guys. One was a computer scientist, and the other one was a psychologist, and they worked together because what they saw was that the human brain kind of runs different programs like a computer, and these programs can be corrupt or not actually true, but they're affecting the whole entire system, which is, of course, you.
Mhm.
So it looks at like getting rid of these files and replacing them, rewriting them
Yep.
so that you're not carrying them around. Really, really actually amazing healing method. Um,
Mhm.
like it's something that I've used with clients and stuff, and it's crazy the changes that people can experience from doing NLP.
I gotta say that that has been my favorite method to use in general, for whatever I can practice on myself with it, for healing, like just whatever I'm struggling with or symptoms of family karma or other stuff
Mm,
presently. In general, when I got into spirituality, that was the first way or place I heard about it, was people wanting to get into hypnosis so they can do an NLP, to help with trauma triggers, responses, and just whatever pockets of that karma or trauma they can't really face and like lag on, as it were. so they can at least get a bit of a breath to start reworking that as a whole aspect. It's really cool.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think, and this does extend, I will say, past family lineage healing. This
It
kind of
does.
delves into a little bit of soul healing aspect, which will be a different episode in itself because that is
Yes.
a huge topic at some point. But there are definitely processes, and I won't get into the processes because this isn't a teaching class on how to teach NLP. Maybe if someone wants to hear that, we'll explore that and at some point. But there are processes within NLP that you can do where you actually pick a particular thing and you actually go back to the first instance of it occurring, and depending on who you get taught by, some people believe this, some people don't, so take this as you will, but either people go back to even like in vitro, like
Mhm.
things happening in the womb, like feeling their
Yeah.
mum.
Mhm.
Right? Because obviously at some point we become an aspect of where we have like some comprehension, understanding. And if, mom's worried and concerned about a lot of different things and she's in a bad situation, those hormones are getting fed to the baby. Um, as much, even if the mum doesn't necessarily want that to happen.
Mhm.
That's just unfortunately the way that it happens. Obviously, some of it goes back to previous lives where it stems from, um, and or it goes back to more often than not. It goes back to under the age of 7.
Yeah.
uh, a lot of a lot of like trauma experience of if it's occurring this life, when things start, you'll actually quite often find that there's something under the age of 7. So when you start going back through your timeline, if it's not under the age of 7, try and go back and see if there's anything else further back, because you want to go to the root of the cause when
Mhm.
you're looking for these things, because if you clear the root, everything else disappears.
Yeah, basically. Um, that's why a lot of people kind of suggest going for the root anyway. If you can't deal with the symptoms and the coping or whatever, just go straight for the root. But you don't know how far that might be going back. Some of it is going to
Mm,
take time and some practice because um, one thing I don't know why, but I need to freaking outline is a disclaimer. NLP is a professional practice that does need
yeah,
to be learned. Uh you should not do it willy-nilly if you are one of those spiritual people that has a chance at actually doing it uncertified and stuff like that, without much training or whatever. Do take caution, not don't like, because I
yeah,
remember when I had someone suggest me actually NLP. I even forgot about this. I did find out the point that they were more silly with it. If you could, they would get visualizations where they tune into creations more so than actual karma or trauma or something they remember from their consciousness. They would be hypnotized into a specific state. But at the same time, you might actually accidentally lead a person you don't even have any idea where it is or what it is by doing that, in my opinion, because you don't know what you might accidentally trigger without having, some responsibility with it. So careful
yeah.
with it,
That's
kids, because you can do a lot of
very
things.
true. Like, obviously, do go see people that have trained in it, people that have practiced in it, people that have worked in it and actually have some comprehension of the things that can actually happen. Obviously, if you've got a friend that's learning it, or and you want to be the quote unquote guinea pig, go ahead, right? Um, no one's stopping you because everyone's got to learn these things from somewhere.
Hmm.
Like, I've definitely learned and started from somewhere. Um, one of the things I will say when we go back to the root, and it's really interesting, I've had clients that like they come out of it and they like look at me and they are like, and these are like non-spiritual
Hmm.
people sometimes, by the way, and they're like, oh my god, like, are you serious? Like, and they're like, and I was like, "So how'd it go?" And they're like, "It cleared everything," like, because you take them through to make sure it's cleared everything. They're like, "It
Uh-huh.
cleared every like." everything. And then I'd like have like a follow-up session and they're like, I feel like a different person. Like I am, and of course over time something else happens,
Mhm.
you get more work to do, that things change. But at the same time, a lot of the time that thing can disappear for the rest of their life.
Yep.
And they're like, it's like to a lot of people, even like I guess even to me, like because I've obviously also experienced this when I was like learning it. It's like, whoa, magic
Mhm.
in the human brain form. This is so cool. Um,
It, yeah,
so
I do want to say like people look for drugs to have that result, or operations and surgery, or like this, that, and the other, like
mhm,
extensive work, right? And then you just go to something
mhm,
like this for an hour, maybe twice a week or something, for like maybe two occasions, and you're like, what the? I'm completely
yeah.
different.
I've definitely, had people that, have said to me after doing this, they're like, "It was like I was high," and I was pretty sure and know for a fact that they had some experience, with, drug taking, and they were like, "Wow, like, that was I didn't even really, like, do anything, and I'm sober now, like, that's crazy, I didn't realize that was real.
Yeah,
Like,
basically.
wow, mind open and blown."
Hmm.
Um, but it shows you the power of the mind
That's what I wanted to
as
say.
well.
Like the amount of power and ability you got right here, is insane.
Mm.
You can fix or destroy everything with it.
I'm trying to think of the actual thing, but, you've got the Eye of Ra. Well, the Eye of Ra, for any of people, like, we're going I mean, I'm just sidetracking here again, but the Eye of Ra is like a symbol in ancient Egypt, but the Eye of Ra is actually literally, if you put it beside the human
Yep.
brain,
Hmm.
is it the pineal gland? It just,
Yes.
like, dropped in. Yeah,
Yes.
is the pineal gland within the human brain.
I mean, I'm pretty
Um
sure you see it if it's like a side slice, like in the middle where the whatever connecting bit
mhm.
is. If you were just, gonna put it side by side, it looks the same if you look at it on the inside of the brain. Yep.
And that's like a symbol about intuition and understanding, and it's like a huge symbol
Hmm.
within ancient Egypt that has so many different meanings and connotations attached with it. And everyone just, oh, it's just a symbol that they just made up, and obviously,
It's not.
people started putting two and two together, like, hey, that kind of looks like the pineal gland if you slice it down the middle. Like, hmm, I wonder if they were actually like
Aware of that?
connecting the
Of
2.
course they were, because Egyptians definitely were splicing up brains when they were like doing whatever frickin' scholarly research. Like, who the fuck do you think we're talking about? At least that's my opinion. Cause
I agree.
they did disectomies, they did frickin' mummification, they did everything. Of course they saw a brain split apart. They were probably the one thing I don't know is how the hell they connected it to that. Maybe like unless it was through personal experiences and that like everyone anecdotally saying like I feel something here, or whatever. Or like I have no idea how
I
they connected
mean
that part. That's the part I'm confused about.
but how did they connect so many other different parts, and, like, you go into
Hmm.
building the pyramids, all these, like, mysteries, um, we don't know,
Yeah, I know.
and we're probably never gonna know. Unless someone gets a time machine, and in which case, hi, like, love to time travel, um,
My
you know?
money's on aliens taking another trip around and leaving a message. That's my thing. I don't think it's gonna be a time traveler. Give it 60 years.
60 years later.
60 years later. We come in
Time
peace.
travels back. You meet someone that looks kind of like you, but like 60 years older. They give you like a random message on like a napkin.
Don't do that to me. No, no. Mm-mm. I'm not taking that ride. I kind of feel like it's not gonna be a cool one. I'm not doing that. Nope. Mm-mm, that's a trap. It'd be cool though, but no.
um But, who knows? Time travel could be real. I guess future us will see. At this point, it's not real
Yep, exactly. We can still
to
speculate
our
in
knowledge. If
amazement.
anyone's like, "Yeah, I did it, I'm a time traveler," like, also, hey, like,
What
love to
up?
have a chat.
Mhm. What do you know? What do you know? Where should
How
I
do
put my investments? Call me. I'll give you 50%.
We have so sidetracked this episode, I will say. Um, I'm just trying to, like, think where we're coming back to. This reminds
I'm
me
just letting you figure that one out.
I noticed. I was like, I'm just gonna leave you to figure out how we bring it back to family lineage healing from ancient Egypt. Um, I mean, for me, I have healing to do around Egypt. That's what I will say. For me
Mhm.
personally, but that's on a soul level of healing. Um, which will be possibly the next episode, actually maybe, we'll see, because there's a few we've flipped a few balls around, so we probably are
Yeah.
gonna drop what the next episode is in this episode. But it may be that or maybe a few other little interesting things. We'll see where we take it. Um but what I will say for those who are, like, hanging out for the soul healing one, you can apply some of this stuff that you learned from family healing onto the soul healing side.
Yep.
Um, it is very similar. Some things go hand in hand. Obviously, the only difference is the soul level, that doesn't necessarily relate to your 3D family. It may be more relating to your friends and, like, or people you strongly connect with.
Mhm. That is true. There's like aspects that you'd imagine to connect, but they're completely kind of separate of each other because they work or connect to different aspects or things. Me personally, whatever I'm working on, soul up there, and I know this is not for everyone. Um, it's like here there's a micro inspection of some things throughout like my behavior, my character, and my psyche primarily. It's kind of like self-therapy and psychology,
Mm,
but just connecting up to there. I know that it is also for a few of the people I know, like you specifically over there. You have the same thing, but other people seem like they have like specific only aspects that might be the case with. It's not the whole scope review. It's gonna relate
mm,
and express differently because that can connect to other things like I don't know. Let's say reoccurringly you have the same type of life or the same type of role or the same type of incarnation because you're either perfecting a gift, a talent, preparing for the future, or building up a breakthrough breakdown of whatever you're still continuing as a behavior or a thing. There's yeah different things like that. Uh,
yeah.
or also profession like specialty. I've noticed that can also
Mhm.
kind of be a reflection up there. But yeah, it depends.
One of the things that I do recommend for either family lineage or, on a sense, soul healing, is journaling.
Yes.
Journaling is really amazing. It allows you to kind of take the steps through your mind, as well as if you don't like journaling, find someone that you can kind of bounce with that's going to ask you questions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what does that mean?
Yep.
You know,
Very
okay,
helpful.
so you feel this way, like, for example, so you had a weird feeling about, cursing someone, like, where does this feeling sit in your body? You know, if you were to look back in time, where in time does this feel like this is coming from? Like, how long has this been a thing for? And obviously that takes intuition, and you might go, "I don't know,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And hit a wall, and that's where, like we were saying before, you put it back, you leave
Yep.
it, right? Because getting obsessed with it, what can happen is you can create things that aren't real, and you just end up piling that work on to something that isn't necessarily even connected or there to that thing.
Yeah, take your time with it because the stuff that needs to come along will kind of flow. You're also, if you're gonna make the intent of exploring or experiencing something that is real and you need to figure out for yourself in terms of soul or other aspects, you're either going to have that journaling session because it's kind
Mm.
of a thing of like you do need to make that intent, not just want it because it's going to show up in its own ways. Maybe you're going to have a realization reflection on a evening walk. You know, that was like a thing that was happening for me for a while. Maybe you're going to find a person that like perfectly questions you and provides you with that environment so you can figure things out. Like there's many different things that you can figure out and do. Art. Art for artists, fucking perfect way to goddamn figure shit out and alchemize. You're not even gonna be aware of it, but it's just happening usually. As an artist, like yeah, you have a heads up on that. But in general, you're gonna find your own way. There's no one thing
Mm.
that I think anyone can suggest to you because sometimes you're gonna need help with it. Sometimes you'll need to bite the bullet on your own and do that personal work that might actually take longer than just a couple of journaling sessions. It might take years. Don't think this is all
Mm.
quick because most of this is not fucking quick. It takes years.
And you might get one piece, but then a few years later you get another piece and like then you're like, "Oh, it's done," and then something else pops up a few years later and you're like it just slowly unravels with time. Um And I will say, like, in terms of journaling, you can just write about an event, you can write about, like, a feeling, you can, go back and look at previous events. You can also write letters as
Mhm.
well, letters to your past self, letters to your future self, um, letters to aspects of like, honestly, letters to your mother, your father, you name it, you can do all of it. Journaling is such a amazing tool if that's something that you do find useful,
Mhm.
to work stuff out. Doesn't work for everyone, I will say.
I do gotta mention the thing that I just remembered. You know those occasions when you just have like an open conversation with someone that isn't necessarily spiritual, but just might be aware or open about whatever aspect you're figuring out about yourself, or the point of like, so I
Mm,
had a feeling like this, and then I had a dream like this and that, and now I'm kind of stuck with this, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck. Is this real? Is it not? Is it describing something I need to pay attention? Should I capitalize on this? Is this just past life stuff? And then, you have this conversation with the person where it's a lot more natural. You get out of your mind about it, and you just have like, let's say, a few words that help you kind of settle yourself in terms of what is the point of that information. If you are going to figure it
mm,
out, then what to do about that. If you're not, then okay, what's the truth of that? Maybe, a bit of a hint, or just, calming you down that, hey, you had something. It might not add up, but hey, you can at least respect that within yourself as something you're aware about. It's
mhm.
not all supposed to make sense. It's just supposed to help you.
Yeah, don't drive yourself crazy
You
trying to find answers. It's not fun.
Also, no one pays
Um,
for you. No one pays you for being spiritual and like getting over your karma and getting through your fucking bullshit and baggage and talking about it. Like no one pays you. Why are you overworking? Overtime is allowed, yet completely not supported. You can
mm.
take a chill pill. If it's fun,
Go have
keep it going.
fun.
Yeah.
Go have fun, get out, live life. Like we say almost every episode,
Mhm.
go live, like, go have a human experience. Enjoy life because that's the reason we're here,
Mhm.
uh, is to have experiences and grow. We're not here to be constantly stuck in a pain cycle of healing. Um, Even if we're a spiritual person. Some people seem to believe that because I'm spiritual, I need to do that, but that's just not true.
Nope. I mean, you have your own cycles and everything. In general, once you kind of figure out the point that, hey, I should also take intent and time to spend my time however I want, whether it's like Netflix and a bunch of junk food, or having, a regular walk, or taking a vacation, like whatever it is, Um, Having spiritual moments is a lot better when you have a balance of whatever else is just, you being you and enjoying yourself for being human and practical. The healing isn't gonna go anywhere. Also, you're still gonna be on this planet for a while in a meat suit, so make the best of
Mhm.
it without making it spiritual work, because you also kind of came down here to relax and kick your feet up. Um, it's not really like common, and there's not a lot of places that let you lounge and not do a bunch of shit. Although there's a bunch of work to be done. Legitimately, not a lot of places provide you with tasty food you can spend hours with other people enjoying out with good music. Like, come on, like, there's
Yeah.
little things that you don't have in other dimensions. Go have fun with this. It's very
Enjoy it.
temporary. Very temporary.
And on that note, I'm actually gonna like challenge everyone listening to the podcast to go do something. Not necessarily obviously if you're about to go to bed or something or work or whatever. But then the challenge is to plan something fun
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. Go do something to give yourself a little bit of joy and happiness within this existence.
Yep, that's actually amazing there. I'm gonna struggle with it, but I'm gonna try and do that too.
It's okay. I'll help you with it off the call.
Thank you. See, I get help.
Uh and on that note, guys, I think we've come to the end of
Mm-hmm.
another episode. Um so my name is Jess
I'm Yuta Jazz.
and this is Awaken Dreaming.
Stop dreaming your life away and start living it. I always have difficulties with the same thing, but yeah, this is Awaken Dreaming,
It's
helping
because
you
it's like
remember that. It,
it's because it's like for I think it's because it's like both astrally and also in the 3D sense. And so you're like trying to figure out like
mm-hmm,
which way am I framing it? Am I framing it in the astral way or am I framing it in the
mm-hmm.
like 3D sense of living? Um
Getting used to like the reflection or whatever. Like, wait, no, your left, my left, that right. I don't know,
mhm.
but
Um
that's
we
us
will
with the same message. Yeah.
yeah. We'll see you next time. Bye.
I'm not gonna do it this time.